Now this is a new feature, so new that we have not, in fact, come up with a name for it yet.
Secret crossovers.
Infinite Crisis of the Secret Crossovers.
Which was the name of a Simpsons Futurama crossover. Something similar to that. We'll come up with something. But anyway, we thought we'd start by looking at what we really have to consider it.
I reckon we call this feature the beginning of the end. Crossovers.
Perfect. The beginning of the end. Let's talk with the literal beginning of the end. And the beginning of the end is the beginning of the end. We're going to look at Secret Wars. Now this is the first time we're looking at a comic series in long form like this. We've fashioned together various notes and quotations and stuff from the people involved. So bear with us as we find our feet here. Okay, I'm on play by play. Boys, you are on color. Does this sound good?
Yep.
Alrighty.
For the purposes of the evening, Bobby and I shall both be Bobby the Brain Heenan.
And I am half of a Gorilla Monsoon.
You're more of a Gorilla Monsoon than you think, Flanagan.
So, well, someone was...
He fucking would say that. He's a fucking mark.
Someone was insulted there. It was me.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the basics, okay? So, Secret Wars was a 12-issue limited series from Marvel, which ran from May 1984 and finished in April 1985, written by Jim Shooter, with art by Mike Zeck, and for one issue only, Bob Layton. Now, we've spoken about Jim Shooter in the past. During the very, very early part of the 1980s, he was editor-in-chief in Marvel, yeah? The position held by our old friend, it's not Perlmutter, it's...
Joey Q. Joey Q is current ENC.
Oh,
sorry, Axel Alonso is current ENC, isn't he?
Yeah. Which formerly held by Joe Quesada and sort of various others over the years. Now, much like positions high up in wrestling organizations, like, for example, talent relations officer in the WWE, it's very much...
President Jack Tunney.
Yeah, it's very much a poison chalice, the editor-in-chief position. Yes, you have all the power, but everybody fucking hates your guts because you're doing the shittiest job. You're a hatchet man, and also you're telling people what they can and cannot do. And when you're working with creative people, I'm sure Mark and Tony, you can speak to this, they don't like to be told what to do.
No. Creatives do not like to be told what to do. They like to collaborate and work together to reach a reasonable resolution. But sometimes, just sometimes, an editor has to go and put the foot down and say, no, this has to be done this way, and here's why. And I would never be an editor that just does the, no, it's being done this way, because those, I feel, are the wrong kind of editors. I would much prefer to be an editor of the type that says, no, but here's why. And for all accounts and purposes, from what we've gleaned from people around the comics industry who were dealing with Jim Shooter at that time, he was not that kind of editor.
Bobby, you have a lot of experience, being the promoter of a comedy club. I'm sure you have a story or two about talent not sticking to the allotted time or not being told, this is the way things are being done. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. Nobody likes. I mean, I can even. I can sort of see it from both sides because I'm sort of, kind of flashing the lights at 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes. You're only supposed to do 7 minutes, that kind of thing. And I also, my own personal image in my head of my father is just someone standing over me, starting every sentence with the words, "Would you not be better?"
My father, his phrase was, "I'll tell you what you're doing wrong."
Exactly.
That persists to this day. So,
my dad was dead. Sorry, I like having dark moments.
Well, we're off to a rip-roaring start with this new feature. In 1983, representatives of the Mattel toy company came to Marvel Comics. Now, Mattel had received a lot of success between 1981 and 1983 with the He-Man action figure line after President Ronald Reagan deregulated kids' cartoons. But what they really, 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 really wanted was some of that sweet, sweet Star Wars size figure money. Obviously, the Kenner company had like a literal license to print money.
3.75-inch market.
That's right. So Kenner had big success first with the Star Wars line, Mark and Sonio, and we know how you feel about Star Wars.
I have a lot of 3.75-inch Star Wars figures.
And I would presume that just even us talking about Star Wars figures like this, you've got about 3.75 inches of something else, if you know what I mean.
Chubbies.
Yeah. So, but also, let's not forget that Kenner had significant success with the... let's not forget, Jack Kirby designed Legend of the Superheroes figures. Have you seen Kirby's designs for the Darkseid figure that they put out?
Darkseid?
Sorry,
right?
Oh, fuck off.
Die for Darkseid.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the thing about Jack Kirby working on figures back then was that Jack Kirby was, as we all know, a man who liked to go around different places and try different things. And action figure design seemed to suit him real well.
Well, also he got a really nice royalty for every figure sold, which
he likes those. He likes royalties and credits.
Yeah.
Hey, Marvel. Hey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting some of that sweet 3.75-inch figure money, Mattel came to Marvel and said, "Look, DC are with those other guys, and we would like to license out some of your characters because Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman aside, the Marvel superheroes were probably more well known than the majority of the DC ones. I don't think
at that point, largely the biggest licensed character out of Marvel had been Spider-Man.
As a side note to this, we are using as our sources here, as our main source, or one of our main sources, is the excellent Marvel, The Untold Story by Sean Howe, which we've reviewed in the past. I highly recommend it. So here's what that book has to say about that. Kenner's deal to produce action figures of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and others instigated its panicked competitor Mattel, which had bid and lost on the DC characters, to hammer out a similar deal with Marvel, thus preventing Kenner from having a superhero monopoly. Mattel's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe toys were already a tremendous success. However, so the company didn't want to pour too much money into a similar effort for another product. All Mattel required Marvel to do was put out a big event comic to be launched to coincide with it, and that the comic had to carry the title Secret Wars, which according to Mattel's market research were 2 words that made children go wild. Now what do you make of that?
Wild. What I think of that is that inadvertently Mattel were responsible for a lot of shit in comics.
They really were.
Because this crossover became the template for all future Marvel event crossovers. If the X-Men really defined the crossover era, then this was the inception point of all major event crossovers at Marvel. The only difference that this was a self-contained series that didn't spill over into all of the other books until, like, the only part that I can really recall spilling over into the other books was the black suit.
Oh yeah, we'll cover that at length a bit later on.
What I'm saying is that inadvertently they created the model by which Marvel would crucify themselves on 30 odd years later. But yeah, the crossover event series was born right here. There had been DC series before, or there were DC series in development. I believe this and Crisis were pretty much in development at the same time, right?
Secret Wars went into development about a year before, but that was because of the toy line. But as the comic series was effectively neck and neck.
Effectively neck and neck. So 1984 was the year you could really say birthed the crossover era in comics.
The original title was actually Cosmic Champions. Jim Shooter had the idea for a piece called Cosmic Champions floating around his head. I would hazard a guess that originally, or that went on to become Contest of Champions, or was that pre-Secret Wars?
I honestly don't know.
I cannot remember.
Now, this is something that's going to fucking blow your mind here.
Every time we should say something, if it's from Shooter's perspective, he's shooting from the hip, and you can follow his blog, Shooting from the Hip, which will tell you all of his stories, absolutely from his perspective. But, take them with a pinch of salt.
Now, according to Shooter, okay, they had to have a gimmick series, like a big superhero team up, because, and these are his words, the era of the superstar creator at Marvel was over, and they needed that gimmick to sell it. Now, here is a partial list of the creators that were, at that time, working for Marvel. You've got John Byrne.
Never heard of him.
Walter and Louise Simonson.
Nope.
Frank Miller.
Who are they?
Who?
Frank Miller. Chris
Oh,
Claremont.
Jesus.
Peter David.
Oh, who's...
Nah, nobody's.
The other thing that Shooter said as an editorial mandate is that only he had the necessary clarity of vision to write a story as complex as Secret Wars, and his reasons read thusly. The only person who I felt could write Secret Wars was me. As editor-in-chief, by definition, I was the company's designated keeper of the franchises, and the ordained absolute authority on the characters, all part of the job, at least back then. The writers could, and did, argue with me, and on some occasions talk me into seeing their point of view regarding what Thor, Spider-Man, or the X-Men were doing, say, in a given situation, but ultimately, it was my call, and that made things a little easier. For instance, now get this, on one occasion, writer A, who shall remain nameless, wanted Doctor Doom to guest villain in the series that he wrote. I okayed it over the snarling objectors of writer B, who wrote the series in which Doom usually appeared.
Hang on.
Who was writing Fantastic Four at that time?
It was John Byrne and Chris Claremont.
Oh, there you go.
This is the Doombot incident, isn't it?
Yeah, I would not allow the Marvel Universe to be divided into fiefdoms. But then, writer B wrote a story proving that the Doctor Doom scene in writer A's series was a robot. The intimation being that the real Doctor Doom wouldn't behave so stupidly. Somehow, writer B's editor didn't realise what he was up to and let it slip past. Writer A was furious, etc. So because of that sort of shit, Jim Shooter felt that he was the only person that could control like such a sprawling editorial thing. And when we go through the list of characters that are in Secret Wars, you'll see it was a big diverse list covering a lot of stories. So there might be something to say for that.